I was recently speaking to my colleague Cam Frasier, who is a men's sex coach as well, and he was sharing that the word pleasure in his experience has been coded as feminine, and therefore men don't necessarily relate to it in the way that they might relate to other words. And I think this is so brilliant of an observation. The word pleasure, even though it is universal, even though the experience of pleasure is a human, maybe even an animal, maybe even a conscious being experience, I think that pleasure is so universal and so important, it has been associated with the female experience. And I'm curious to know, maybe write in the comments if you agree. When someone like me uses the word pleasure, or we say self-pleasure, or like what brings you pleasure, or how do you experience pleasure, do you identify with that word, or do you feel sort of like that's something that women do? Pleasure is for women, Caitlin. Why are you asking? What Cam recommended, and I totally align with, is asking yourself instead, if the word pleasure doesn't resonate with you, what brings you enjoyment? So let's do a little thought experiment just right now together live here. I want you to think of something that you enjoy doing. Forget that I used any other word so far in this YouTube video. Just enjoy. It could be spending time with your kid, your dog. It could be hiking, working on projects. It could be having sex with your girlfriend. It could be getting tied up and paddled. Do you have something? Great. Now think about what it is that feels good to you about that activity, and like really interrogate it. What is it about hiking that causes you to feel good? It's the fresh air and the sound of the leaves rustling in the wind. What is it about playing with your dog that has you feel good? It's the sense of presence and connection, of the physicality, because I'm like throwing the ball and I bring the ball back and we're just like, we're in it together, and there's this physical exertion aspect. What is it even about like being kinky perhaps that you enjoy? It's the feeling of breaking a rule and not getting caught. It's the feeling of doing something kind of naughty that I'm not supposed to be doing that gets me off and gets my partner off. Once you are able to label something that you enjoy and what feels good about that, you are able to understand what brings you pleasure. And this is going to give you more information on what pleasure feels like for you. And for those of you who are thinking right now, Caitlin, you just gave like 2 non-sexual examples, like pleasure outside of the bedroom, pleasure with a dog, that's illegal. What I mean is not pleasure in the sense of just erotic pleasure. This is what we've got to understand, is that pleasure is something that happens both inside and outside of the bedroom. I can take so much pleasure in eating a piece of chocolate or watching a beautiful sunset, all very pleasurable activities. And because for me personally, I can get so tapped in so easily to the pleasure of something, it's easier for me to find pleasure when it comes to sex, whether that is solo or partnered. But if your relationship to pleasure relies solely on sex itself, if sex is your only outlet for pleasure, if it is the only place that you experience pleasure or know what pleasure is, then sex is going to take a totally oversized level of importance to your life and to your well-being. The truth is that sex can't handle all of that. Sex is just sex. It can't be our sole source of connection. It cannot be our sole source of eroticism, of intimacy, or of pleasure. So the more that we can experience pleasure, the more tapped in we are to pleasure, the more fulfilling of a life that we live, and the more it will be easy for us to locate pleasure inside of the bedroom. And that is not just true for ourselves, but that is true for our partners. The more pleasure that I have access to in bed, whether I'm male or female, the more pleasure that I can share with my partner, the more capacity that I have for their pleasure in bed. Pleasure is a birthright. It is a universal human experience, whether we are talking strictly about physical pleasure or emotional pleasure, mental pleasure, spiritual, energetic pleasure. Pleasure is something that I think the world needs a whole lot more of, and the more access that you have to pleasure, the better lover you will be, the better person you will be, the happier, more satisfied member of this global society that we live in. So thank you so much, Cam, for inviting me to think about this. I want to know what you think in the comments. Is pleasure a female word? Do you identify with it? And then secondly, what brings you enjoyment and what feels good about that? I'm Caitlin V. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you here later. Bye.